the untold story of World War II.
Oil was a very important dimension of the global conflagration called the Second World War. It had a critical impact, a decisive impact on strategy and the conduct of the war, and it was central to the outcome.
Hitler was fascinated by modern technology, especially by motorization. Motorization was the key to conquer large parts of the Soviet Union and of other parts of Europe.
German chemists were the best in the world, and Germany's leading chemical producer was a company called IG Farben.
The challenge was to convert one of those few resources that the Germans had, brown and hard coal, into the lifeblood of a modern industrial system.
IG had shown it could make synthetic oil in a test tube. Now it began to produce over 2,000 barrels a day. Coal was pulverized and liquefied under high pressure. The result was a substance with much the same properties as oil. It was an achievement that won IG scientists the Nobel Prize for Chemistry.
But by the late 1920s, this expensive process, which was a very big engineering effort, was languishing because it simply could not compete with cheap oil on the world market. And it continued to languish until Hitler came to power, and he recognized in synthetic fuels a solution to one of his major problems as he built his war machine.
The substitute for oil. The Americans had refined it and created a powerful new aviation fuel.
Hitler's Air Force ran into the technological skills of the American oilmen. They had developed during the 1930s a 100-octane fuel, but it proved to be critical in the Battle of Britain because it gave the Spitfires greater power, greater lift, greater maneuverability in their air battles with the Messerschmitts.
The American Air Force was convinced that the way to shorten the war was to target Hitler's oil supply. Allied strategic bombing forces turned their attention to the German synthetic fuel plants. IG Farben's experiment of turning coal into oil had grown into a vast industry. By now, synthetic fuel was virtually Hitler's only source of oil, and more plants were desperately needed. To build them, IG tapped a new source of labor: the concentration camps.
There's no question that those plants could not have been completed had IG Farben not employed the slave labor. And altogether, in the course of time for the construction of these plants, something like 25,000 people died either on the site or as a result of being returned to the camp where they were gassed afterwards.
The Americans prepared to make synthetic oil plants their #1 target.
The American Air Force under General Spaatz proceeded to launch 2 very heavy attacks on the synthetic oil plants. The German response was immediate. The signals unbuttoned at Bletchley Park showed their great alarm.
The synthetic oil plants had been providing 90% of Germany's aviation fuel. Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments, rushed to inspect the damage.
The enemy has struck us at one of our weakest points. If they persist at it, we will soon no longer have any fuel production worth mentioning. Our one hope is that the other side has an Air Force General Staff as scatterbrained as ours.
The Americans prosecuted this campaign with great vigor, making in all nearly 100 attacks, and the production of aviation spirit, as required by the German Air Force, had sunk to 0.25% of what they needed.
Ironically, the Germans had just developed the world's first jet fighter. But with so little fuel, they needed farm animals to get it to the runway.
This movement on the airport was partly done by cows. And if you looked at this picture, having 3 of the most modern jet fighters sitting on the ground and taught by cows. This makes a picture which is unbelievable, ridiculous. But this has shown our present situation.